Some secrets are worth dying for. Others are worth killing for. But, when Private Markuschan stepped off the transport truck at Forward Operating Base Talon, he carried a secret that would make 9 hardened soldiers question everything they thought they knew about courage, loyalty, and what it truly means to serve. The dust hadn't even settled from his arrival when Sergeant Rodriguez and his crew surrounded the quiet newcomer in the supply tent. They thought they were dealing with just another scared rookie who needed to be broken in. They had no idea they were about to learn why the military's most classified unit had sent their failure to this forgotten outpost in the middle of nowhere. What happened in that tent would echo through the base for years to come. Because sometimes, the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone underestimates. The transport truck coughed black smoke as it pulled away, leaving Private Markuschan standing alone in a cloud of desert dust. Forward Operating Base Talon stretched before him like a collection of dirty boxes scattered across the sand by a giant's careless hand. The Afghan sun beat down mercilessly, and sweat already beaded on his forehead despite the early morning hour. Marcus adjusted his duffel bag and took his first real look around. The base was smaller than he'd expected, maybe 200 soldiers at most. Prefab buildings, concrete barriers, and endless coils of razor wire created a maze of military efficiency. In the distance, mountains rose like jagged teeth against the pale sky. Fresh meat, someone called from a group of soldiers near the motor pool. Laughter followed. Marcus had heard worse. Much worse. He made his way to the command building, boots crunching on gravel. The duty sergeant barely looked up from his paperwork when Marcus presented his orders. Chen, Marcus. Private First Class. The sergeant's name tape read Williams. He had the look of a man who'd been behind a desk too long and missed the action. Says here you're coming from. He squinted at the papers. That's classified, apparently. Lucky you. Yes, sir. Don't call me sir. I work for a living. Williams stamped the papers with more force than necessary. You're in Bravo Company, 3rd Platoon. Sergeant Rodriguez runs that show. Fair warning, kid, Rodriguez doesn't like mysteries. Neither do his boys. Marcus nodded. He'd dealt with Rodriguez types before. Barracks 7, Bunk 23. Drop your gear and report to the supply tent. Rodriguez wants to meet you. Williams handed back the papers. And, Chen? Whatever classified nonsense you came from, leave it there. This is a real deployment with real bullets. We don't need any headquarters heroes screwing things up. The walk to Barracks 7 gave Marcus time to observe. Soldiers went about their duties with the practiced efficiency of a unit that had been together a while. They moved in familiar groups, shared inside jokes, operated with the easy rhythm of men who trusted each other. Marcus had seen it before, the tight bonds that formed when people faced danger together. He'd also seen what happened when those bonds were tested. Barracks 7 was a long, low building that smelled of sweat, cleaning supplies, and something indefinably masculine. About 20 bunks lined the walls, most of them occupied by gear and personal items. A few soldiers looked up when he entered. You the new guy? Asked a tall soldier with corporal stripes. His name tape said Harrison. That's me. Marcus Chen. Where you coming from? It was a simple question that Marcus couldn't answer honestly. Stateside training. Harrison's eyes narrowed slightly. What kind of training? The kind that prepares you for this. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. The truth was classified above the pay grade of everyone on this base, including the commanding officer. The truth was that Marcus had spent the last 3 years in a program that officially didn't exist, learning skills that were never supposed to be used on American soil. The truth was that he'd been sent here because he'd asked too many questions about those skills. Aha! Harrison didn't look convinced, but he pointed to a bunk near the far wall. That's yours. Rodriguez wants to see you in 10 minutes. Supply tent, behind the mess hall. Marcus unpacked quickly. He didn't have much, standard issue gear, a few personal items, and one thing that definitely wasn't standard issue. He wrapped it carefully in a dirty t-shirt and buried it at the bottom of his footlocker. Some secrets were better kept hidden, at least for now. The supply tent was exactly where Harrison said it would be. Marcus could hear voices inside as he approached. Multiple voices, all of them sounding amused about something. He pushed through the tent flap and found himself facing 9 soldiers arranged in a rough semicircle. They'd been expecting him. In the center stood Sergeant Rodriguez, a compact man with scarred hands and eyes that had seen too much. To his left and right, 8 other soldiers in various poses of casual intimidation. This wasn't a welcoming committee. This was an interrogation panel. Well, Rodriguez said, his voice carrying a slight accent. The mysterious Private Chen. We've been hearing interesting things about you. Marcus stood at attention. Sergeant. At ease. We're all friends here. Rodriguez's smile didn't reach his eyes. Aren't we, boys? The others chuckled. Marcus recognized the dynamic immediately. These were Rodriguez's inner circle, the soldiers who'd proven themselves in his eyes. They were loyal to him personally, not just to rank and regulation. It made them dangerous in ways that went beyond their obvious physical capabilities. So, Chen, Rodriguez continued, circling slowly. Word is you came from some classified program. That right? My previous assignment is classified, Sergeant. Your previous assignment, Rodriguez repeated mockingly. You hear that, boys? His previous assignment. Like he's some kind of special operator or something. More laughter. Corporal Vega, a heavy-set man with tattoos covering both arms, spoke up. He looks pretty special, Sarge. Real pretty boy. Now, Rodriguez held up a hand. We shouldn't judge. Maybe our boy Chen here really is some kind of badass. Maybe he's got skills we can't even imagine. The way he said skills made it sound like a joke. Marcus remained silent. He'd learned long ago that sometimes the best response was no response at all. Of course, Rodriguez continued, we've got our own way of evaluating new arrivals. Time-tested methods. Traditional, you might say. Specialist Murphy, a redhead with nervous energy, cracked his knuckles. Real traditional. See, Chen, the thing is, Rodriguez stepped closer, we're a tight unit here. We've been through hell together. Lost good men together. Saved each other's lives more times than we can count. That creates a bond, you understand? Marcus understood perfectly. He'd seen the same bond in his previous unit, before everything went wrong. But, trust, Rodriguez went on, trust has to be earned. And, before we trust you with our lives out there, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with in here. The tent felt smaller somehow, as if the canvas walls were pressing inward. 9 against 1. Marcus had faced worse odds, but never with people he was supposed to trust. Never with people who were supposed to be on his side. So here's what's going to happen, Rodriguez said conversationally. We're going to have ourselves a little conversation. You're going to tell us exactly where you came from, what you did there, and why you're really here. And you're going to be completely honest, because lies have a way of getting people killed. Private Kowalski, barely out of high school by the look of him, shifted nervously near the tent entrance. He was the youngest, probably the newest to Rodriguez's circle. His discomfort suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with what was happening. And if I tell you it's classified? Marcus asked. Rodriguez's smile widened. Well, then, we'll have to assume you've got something to hide. Something that might put us all at risk. And we can't have that, can we? The implicit threat hung in the air like smoke. Marcus could feel the tension building, the careful choreography of intimidation unfolding exactly as Rodriguez had planned it. Each man knew his role in this little drama. I understand your concern, Sergeant, Marcus said carefully. But, I'm bound by regulations? Sergeant Torres, a quiet man with sharp cheekbones, spoke for the first time. Regulations don't stop bullets, Chen. Trust stops bullets. Having your buddy's back stops bullets. That's right, Rodriguez nodded approvingly. And, trust, as I mentioned, has to be earned. So let's start earning it. Where did you come from? Marcus looked around the semicircle of faces. Some were genuinely suspicious, worried that he might be a security risk. Others were just enjoying the show, the entertainment of breaking in the new guy. A few, like Kowalski, seemed uncomfortable with the whole situation but too afraid of Rodriguez to speak up. In that moment, Marcus made a decision that would change everything at Forward Operating Base Telone. Not the decision they expected, but one born from 3 years of classified training and a lifetime of being underestimated. I came from a program that doesn't exist, he said quietly, to do things that never happened, with people who were never there. The tent fell silent. Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Sergeant, that some things are classified for reasons that go way beyond your clearance level. And some people are sent places for reasons you wouldn't understand even if I could tell you. It was the truth, as much of it as he could share. But Marcus could see immediately that it was the wrong answer for this room, with these men, at this moment. Rodriguez stepped forward, close enough that Marcus could smell the coffee on his breath. You know what I think, Chen? I think you're full of shit. I think you washed out of whatever soft assignment you had, and now they dumped you on us. I think you're about to learn what real soldiers do to wannabes who think they're better than everyone else. The circle began to tighten. Marcus felt the familiar coldness settle in his chest, the calm that had been drilled into him through thousands of hours of training. Part of him hoped they would just let this go, would back down and accept him as another soldier doing his job. But a larger part of him knew they wouldn't. Rodriguez had gone too far to back down now. His authority was on the line in front of his men. And men like Rodriguez would rather escalate than lose face. Last chance, Rodriguez said. Truth time. What's your real story? Marcus looked each man in the eye, memorizing positions, calculating distances, identifying weapons. Old habits from a program that officially didn't exist. The truth, Marcus said slowly, is that you're about to make a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your very short military career. Rodriguez laughed, but there was no humor in it. Boys, he said without taking his eyes off Marcus, I think our new friend needs an attitude adjustment. The first man to move was Vega, coming from the left with a looping right hand that had probably ended a dozen barroom fights. Marcus slipped it easily, almost casually, and drove his elbow back into Vega's solar plexus. The big man folded like a camp chair. Murphy came next, trying to tackle low. Marcus sprawled, caught him in a guillotine choke, and dropped him unconscious in 3 seconds. The tent erupted into chaos. But, for Marcus, everything slowed down. This was what he'd been trained for, though not in this context, not with these people. His body moved with practiced efficiency while his mind catalogued threats, calculated angles, anticipated movements. Torres swung a folding knife he'd pulled from somewhere. Marcus caught his wrist, hyperextended the elbow, and sent him crashing into a stack of supply boxes. The knife clattered away harmlessly. Harrison tried to grab him from behind. Marcus dropped his weight, spun, and put Harrison down with a perfectly placed uppercut that lifted the tall soldier off his feet. Private Johnson, built like a linebacker, charged straight ahead with no technique but plenty of power. Marcus sidestepped at the last second, used Johnson's momentum against him, and sent him headfirst into the tent support pole. The entire structure shuddered. Rodriguez and the remaining 3 soldiers backed away, suddenly, realizing that their easy target wasn't so easy after all. Kowalski looked like he was about to be sick. What the hell are you? Rodriguez whispered, his hand drifting toward his sidearm. Marcus straightened his uniform and looked around at the 5 unconscious soldiers scattered around the supply tent. I'm exactly what I told you I was, Sergeant. Someone from a classified program. You're some kind of assassin, Torres groaned from the floor, clutching his broken arm. No, Marcus said sadly. I'm someone who asked too many questions about becoming one. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Rodriguez's hand froze on his weapon as the implications sank in. You were being trained to kill Americans, Rodriguez said. It wasn't a question. Marcus met his eyes steadily. I was being trained to kill whoever they pointed me at. The problem came when I started asking who they were. In the distance, Marcus could hear running footsteps, shouts, the sound of people responding to the commotion. Soon the tent would be full of soldiers and officers, all demanding explanations he couldn't give. But, for now, in this moment of strange calm after violence, 9 soldiers had learned something they weren't supposed to know. Something that would change everything at Forward Operating Base Talon. The truth was often more dangerous than any lie. And Marcus Chen had just told them more truth than any of them were prepared to handle. Captain Sarah Mitchell arrived at the supply tent 7 minutes after the first soldier came stumbling out, clutching a broken nose and babbling about the new guy being some kind of superhuman killing machine. She'd commanded Forward Operating Base Talon for 18 months, long enough to know that soldier gossip usually contained about 10% truth mixed with 90% exaggeration. But, when she ducked through the tent flap and saw 5 unconscious soldiers scattered around overturned supply crates like discarded mannequins, she realized this might be the exception. Private Chen stood at attention in the center of the destruction, his uniform barely wrinkled, not a mark on him. Sergeant Rodriguez sat on a medical crate holding an ice pack to his jaw. 3 of his remaining men clustered around him like bodyguards. The tent looked like a tornado had hit it. Someone want to explain this? Captain Mitchell asked quietly. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Rodriguez looked like he was wrestling with some internal decision. Chen remained motionless, eyes fixed on a point somewhere over her left shoulder. Training accident, ma'am, Rodriguez finally said. Training accident. Mitchell's voice was flat. In the supply tent. That left 5 soldiers unconscious. Yes, ma'am. Mitchell had been an officer long enough to recognize a lie wrapped in military courtesy. She also recognized something else in Rodriguez's voice: fear. Real fear, not the manufactured respect that often passed for it. Private Chen, she said without taking her eyes off Rodriguez. Your assessment of this training accident. I was defending myself, ma'am. Against 9 soldiers. Yes, ma'am. Simultaneously. They came at me simultaneously, ma'am. Mitchell finally looked directly at Chen. He was smaller than she'd expected, maybe 5'8" and lean rather than bulky. No obvious scars, no intimidating tattoos, nothing that screamed dangerous to the casual observer. But there was something in his stillness that reminded her of a coiled spring. And you felt threatened enough to put 5 men in the medical tent. I felt threatened enough to end the threat, ma'am. The distinction wasn't lost on her. Ending the threat was different from winning a fight. It implied calculation, precision, professional violence rather than angry brawling. Rodriguez, she said, take your men and get them medical attention. I want a full written report on my desk by 1800 hours. The real report, not the sanitized version. Rodriguez started to object, then thought better of it. Yes, ma'am. As the soldiers filed out, Private Kowalski lingered near the entrance. Ma'am? Nobody meant for it to go this far. It was just supposed to be, standard new guy initiation. Thank you, Private. That'll be all. When they were alone, Mitchell studied Chen more carefully. His service record had been heavily redacted, almost comically so. Entire sections blacked out, assignment histories that led nowhere, training records that referenced programs she'd never heard of despite her intelligence background. Walk with me, Private. They left the tent and headed toward the command building. The sun was climbing toward midday, and the base was settling into its normal rhythm. But Mitchell could see soldiers watching from doorways and windows, whispered conversations stopping when they passed. Word traveled fast in a closed community like this. How long were you at Bragg? She asked, testing. I wasn't at Bragg, ma'am. Benning? No, ma'am. Care to tell me where you were? I'd need to make some phone calls first, ma'am. They'd reached her office. Mitchell gestured for Chen to take a seat and closed the door behind them. The small space was organized chaos, maps on every wall, stacks of reports, a coffee pot that had seen better decades. "Private, I'm going to be direct with you. Your service record looks like someone took a paper shredder to it. You just put down 5 combat veterans like they were children. And your attitude suggests you think this is all perfectly normal." She sat behind her desk. "So I'm going to ask you once, clearly and directly, what am I dealing with here?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. "Permission to speak freely, ma'am?" "Granted. You're dealing with a political problem disguised as a personnel problem." The answer surprised her. "Explain." "Someone in Washington decided I knew too much about the wrong things. Couldn't discharge me because I hadn't done anything wrong. Couldn't promote me because they couldn't trust me. So they sent me somewhere I couldn't cause trouble. And where is that somewhere you came from? A place that trains soldiers to do things that Congress doesn't fund and the public doesn't know about." Mitchell felt a chill despite the afternoon heat. She'd spent enough time in intelligence circles to recognize the edges of something much larger than a simple personnel transfer. "What kind of things?" "The kind that require congressional oversight. Which is why I started asking questions." Before Mitchell could respond, her secure phone rang. She almost ignored it, but the ring pattern indicated priority traffic from division headquarters. "Captain Mitchell." "Captain, this is Colonel Anderson, G2. We need to discuss one of your new arrivals." Mitchell looked at Chen, who was studying his hands with sudden interest. "I assume you mean Private Chen." "That would be correct." "Is he in your office right now?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Don't let him leave. I'm sending someone to collect him." "Sir, with respect, Private Chen is assigned to my unit." "If there's a problem, Captain, this is way above your pay grade. The people coming for Chen have authority that trumps yours, mine, and probably our commanding generals. Just keep him secure until they arrive." The line went dead. Mitchell stared at the phone for a moment, then looked at Chen. "You want to tell me what that was about?" "Someone's decided I'm too dangerous to leave alone, ma'am." "And, are you?" Chen met her eyes for the first time since entering the office. "That depends entirely on who decides to threaten me, ma'am." The next few hours passed in a strange bubble of normalcy wrapped around growing tension. Chen remained in Mitchell's office, perfectly calm, occasionally accepting coffee or a sandwich from the duty sergeant. Mitchell tried to maintain normal base operations while fielding increasingly urgent calls from higher headquarters. Around 1,500 hours, Rodriguez appeared at her door looking like a man who'd aged 5 years in 6 hours. "Ma'am? I need to talk to you about Chen." "Come in, Sergeant." "Close the door." Rodriguez glanced nervously at Chen, who hadn't moved from his chair. "Ma'am, maybe this should be private." "Private Chen isn't going anywhere, and, frankly, I think he has a right to hear whatever you're going to tell me." Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, we did some digging. Asked around, made some calls to buddies at other bases. And Chen's name came up in some conversations we probably shouldn't have been having. Stories about a program that officially doesn't exist. Training that supposedly never happened." Mitchell leaned forward. "What kind of stories?" "The kind that explain how someone learns to take down 5 soldiers in about 30 seconds without breaking a sweat." Rodriguez's voice dropped. "Ma'am, there are rumors about a unit that trains people to eliminate American citizens who pose national security risks." "Targeted assassination, ma'am. On domestic soil." The office fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning unit. "And the rumor is that Chen was part of this unit?" Mitchell asked. "The rumor is that Chen was being trained for this unit when he started asking inconvenient questions about target selection and authorization protocols." Chen spoke for the first time in hours. The rumor would be essentially correct. Mitchell felt something cold settle in her stomach. "You're telling me you're trained to assassinate American citizens?" "I'm telling you I was being trained for operations that would require congressional authorization under current law." Operations that weren't receiving that authorization. Jesus Christ, Rodriguez muttered. The problem, Chen continued, came when I pointed out this legal discrepancy to my chain of command. Apparently, asking constitutional questions makes you unsuitable for unconstitutional activities. Mitchell's secure phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize. Captain Mitchell. Captain, this is Agent Sarah Hayes, Department of Justice. We're wheels up from Quantico. ETA to your location is approximately 4 hours. Agent Hayes, I don't understand. Private Chen is a soldier under my command. Private Chen is a potential witness in a federal investigation. We need to debrief him regarding his knowledge of illegal domestic operations. Mitchell looked at Chen, who was listening to every word. What kind of illegal domestic operations? The kind that involve training military personnel to conduct targeted killings of American citizens without due process. The kind that represent a clear violation of the Posse Comitatus Act and about 6 other federal statutes. The pieces began falling into place. You're investigating this program. We're investigating everyone who was part of this program. Private Chen's willingness to report his concerns internally is the only reason he's being treated as a witness rather than a subject. After the call ended, Mitchell sat back in her chair and studied Chen with new eyes. So you're the whistleblower. I'm the soldier who asked awkward questions. And they sent you here to keep you quiet while they figured out what to do with you. That would be my assessment, ma'am. Rodriguez was looking back and forth between them like a man watching a tennis match. Ma'am, what does this mean for the base? It was a good question. Forward Operating Base Talon was supposed to be a routine deployment, a place where soldiers did their jobs and came home safely. Now it was apparently harboring a witness in a federal investigation of illegal government assassination programs. It means, Mitchell said carefully, that we're about to have visitors who will want to talk to anyone who's had contact with Private Chen. All of us? Rodriguez asked. Probably. Especially you and your squad, since you're the ones who had the most direct interaction. Rodriguez looked sick. Ma'am, we didn't know. When we confronted him in the supply tent, we thought he was just some desk jockey trying to act tough. Instead, you found out he really was tough. Ma'am, what he did to my men, that wasn't normal soldier training. That was something else entirely. Chen spoke up again. Sergeant Rodriguez, your men fought well. They just weren't prepared for someone trained specifically to neutralize multiple opponents quickly and quietly. Neutralize, Rodriguez repeated. Not defeat. Neutralize. There's a difference. Mitchell was beginning to understand that difference. Chen hadn't been trying to win a fight or prove his toughness. He'd been ending a threat using the minimum necessary force. It was the difference between a brawler and a professional. Private Chen, she said, when these federal agents arrive, what exactly are they going to want to know? Everything I can tell them about the program. Names, locations, training methods, target selection criteria, command structure. And how much of that can you legally reveal? All of it. The people who classified this information don't have the legal authority to do so. You can't classify illegal activities to hide them from oversight. Mitchell's experience told her that the situation was about to get much more complicated. Federal investigations had a way of expanding beyond their original scope, especially when they involved military personnel and classified programs. Is there anything else I should know? She asked. Chen was quiet for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. Ma'am, the program I was part of wasn't operating in isolation. It was part of a larger network of activities that pushed legal and constitutional boundaries. What kind of activities? The kind that will probably result in congressional hearings and court-martial proceedings for a lot of people with stars on their shoulders. The implications hit Mitchell like a physical blow. This wasn't just about one rogue program or a few bad decisions by mid-level officers. This was potentially a systemic violation of American law by senior military and civilian leadership. How high does this go? She asked. High enough that sending me here was supposed to make the problem disappear. Mitchell looked out her window at the base that had been her responsibility for 18 months. Soldiers were going about their duties, maintaining equipment, preparing for patrols, doing the thousands of small tasks that kept a military unit functioning. None of them knew that their quiet outpost was about to become the center of a federal investigation that could reach the Pentagon. "Private Chen," she said finally, "I want you to know that while you're on my base, you'll be treated like any other soldier under my command. No special restrictions, no isolation, no harassment." "Thank you, ma'am. But I also want you to understand that your presence here has put every soldier on this base at risk. Not physical risk, but career risk. Legal risk. The kind of risk that follows people for the rest of their lives." Chen nodded slowly. "I understand that, ma'am. And I'm sorry for it. But some things are more important than individual careers." Such as making sure that American soldiers aren't turned into weapons against American citizens. The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. The duty sergeant entered with a message that federal vehicles had been spotted approaching the main gate. Agent Hayes and her team had arrived early. Agent Sarah Hayes looked like she'd stepped out of a federal law enforcement recruiting poster, professional, competent, and carrying the kind of authority that made military officers nervous. She arrived with a team of 6 investigators and enough paperwork to requisition half the base for federal business. Captain Mitchell met them at the main gate. Protocol demanded respect for federal authority, but this was still her base and these were still her soldiers. "Agent Hayes, welcome to FOB Talon." "Captain Mitchell. Thank you for securing Private Chen. We'll need to establish a secure area for debriefing and interviews." "Of course. I've prepared conference room A. It's hardened against electronic surveillance and has secure communications capability." Hayes nodded approvingly. "We'll also need to interview anyone who's had significant contact with Private Chen since his arrival. That would be Sergeant Rodriguez and his squad, primarily. They were involved in the incident this morning." "Incident?" Mitchell had been dreading this question. 9 soldiers attempted to intimidate Private Chen during what they called a standard new arrival hazing. Private Chen defended himself. Defended himself how? He put 5 soldiers in the medical tent without sustaining any injuries himself. Hayes stopped walking. 5 soldiers. Simultaneously. "Yes, ma'am." "And his condition afterward?" "Unmarked. Calm. Professional." Hayes exchanged glances with one of her team members. "That's consistent with the training profile we've developed for program participants." "Program? I'm sorry, Captain. That's classified until we complete our interviews." They reached the conference room, where Private Chen waited with 2 MP guards. Hayes dismissed the guards and gestured for her team to set up recording equipment. "Private Chen, I'm Agent Hayes, Department of Justice. You've been read your rights regarding this interview?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you understand that your cooperation in this investigation may affect how the Justice Department proceeds with charges against other program participants?" Chen straightened slightly. "I understand that telling the truth is my obligation as an American soldier, regardless of the consequences." Hayes smiled for the first time since arriving. "That's exactly the answer I was hoping for." The formal interview lasted 6 hours. Captain Mitchell was allowed to observe, though she couldn't ask questions or comment. What she heard made her understand why someone had wanted Chen silenced permanently. The program, officially designated as Special Activities Division Enhancement Training, had been operating for 4 years under the authority of a classified presidential finding. Its mission was to train military personnel for high-value targeted elimination operations in support of national security objectives. In plain language, it was an assassination school. The training was comprehensive, Chen explained in response to Hayes' questions. Advanced hand-to-hand combat, marksmanship with exotic weapons, infiltration techniques, psychological profiling of targets, and methods for elimination that could appear accidental or natural. "And the target sets you were briefed on?" "Initially, foreign nationals. Terrorist leaders, weapons dealers, individuals who posed direct threats to American interests overseas. Initially? Chen's jaw tightened slightly. About 18 months into the program, we began receiving briefings on domestic targets. American citizens living within the continental United States. What kind of American citizens? Journalists investigating classified programs. Congressional staffers asking inconvenient questions. Military officers who had reported irregularities through official channels. Mitchell felt sick. The implications were staggering. The program wasn't just training soldiers to kill America's enemies, it was training them to kill Americans who threatened the secrecy of illegal government operations. And, your reaction to these domestic target briefings? Hayes asked. I raised concerns through my chain of command about the legal authority for such operations. What kind of concerns? The Posse Comitatus Act prohibits military involvement in domestic law enforcement. Targeted killings of American citizens without due process would violate the Fifth and 14th Amendments. And, conducting such operations without congressional oversight would violate the National Security Act of 1947. Hayes leaned forward. You raised constitutional objections. Yes, ma'am. I took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I wasn't about to violate that oath by conducting unconstitutional operations. And, the response from your chain of command? I was told that such concerns were above my pay grade and that operational legality was not my responsibility. But, you persisted. I requested a written legal opinion justifying the domestic operations. I asked to see the congressional authorization for the program. I demanded clarification of the constitutional basis for targeted killings of American citizens. And I was transferred to administrative duties pending a security review. 2 weeks later, I was reassigned here. Hayes made notes on her legal pad. Private Chen, in your assessment, how many soldiers were being trained for domestic operations? My class had 12 soldiers. There were at least 4 other classes running simultaneously. I estimate 50 to 60 soldiers total. And, how many of those soldiers shared your constitutional concerns? Chen was quiet for a long moment. Most of them, ma'am. But, I was the only one willing to put those concerns in writing. Mitchell understood now why Chen had been sent to her remote outpost. He wasn't just a potential whistleblower, he was proof that the program had produced soldiers willing to refuse illegal orders. That made him either a valuable witness or a dangerous liability, depending on which side of the law you were standing on. The interview continued with technical details about training methods, facility locations, and command structure. Chen answered every question with the same calm precision he'd shown since arriving at the base. When Hayes finally called a break, Mitchell found herself alone with Chen in the conference room. Private, I need to ask you something directly. Yes, ma'am. Are you in danger? Is there a reason to believe that people connected to this program might want to silence you permanently? Chen considered the question carefully. Ma'am, I think my transfer here was meant to isolate me while they decided what to do with me. The fact that federal investigators found me suggests that isolation failed. That doesn't answer my question. The program taught us that loose ends are dangerous. People who can't be trusted to keep secrets become operational security risks. And, operational security risks are dealt with permanently. The implications chilled Mitchell to the bone. You're saying they might try to kill you. I'm saying that the people who trained me to eliminate security risks might view me as a security risk. Mitchell looked around the conference room with new eyes. Her base, her soldiers, her responsibility, all of it potentially in the crosshairs of a rogue military program that had already demonstrated its willingness to violate American law. What do you need from me? She asked. Permission to do my job as a soldier, ma'am. Nothing more, nothing less. Before Mitchell could respond, Agent Hayes returned with news that would change everything. Captain, I've just received word from Washington. Based on Private Chen's preliminary testimony, the Attorney General is authorizing a full investigation of what we're now calling the Domestic Elimination Program. What does that mean for my base? It means that FOB Talon is now a federal crime scene. No one leaves, no communications go out without clearance, and every soldier who's had contact with Private Chen will be interviewed. Mitchell felt her world shift. For how long? Until we're satisfied that we have the complete truth about this program and everyone involved in it. Agent Hayes, with respect, this is a combat outpost. We have operational responsibilities, Captain. Those responsibilities are suspended as of right now. This investigation takes priority over everything else. The next 48 hours passed in a surreal mix of military routine and federal investigation. Soldiers went about their basic duties while FBI agents conducted interviews in every available private space. The base felt like a prison where everyone was simultaneously a guard and an inmate. Rodriguez and his squad were questioned extensively about their confrontation with Chen. To their credit, they answered honestly, even when those answers made them look bad. We thought he was some kind of wannabe, Rodriguez told Agent Hayes during his interview. Turned out he was exactly what he said he was, someone from a classified program. And your assessment of his combat capabilities? Ma'am, I've been in combat for 3 tours. I've seen soldiers fight for their lives against trained enemy fighters. What Chen did to my men wasn't fighting. It was something else entirely. Explain. Fighting is messy. People get hurt on both sides. What Chen did was clinical. Precise. He neutralized threats with minimal force and maximum efficiency. That's not soldier training, ma'am. That's something much more specialized. The investigation expanded as more details emerged. Phone records were subpoenaed, financial transactions traced, personnel files examined. The scope of the domestic elimination program grew larger with each new piece of evidence. On the 3rd day, Agent Hayes called Captain Mitchell and Private Chen to a private meeting. We've made arrests in Washington, she announced without preamble. 2 colonels, a brigadier general, and 3 civilian contractors. The program has been shut down and all remaining participants are being debriefed. Mitchell felt relief wash over her. So this is over? The immediate threat to Private Chen is over. But the investigation is just beginning. This program was part of a larger pattern of constitutional violations that reaches into the highest levels of government. How high? Chen asked. High enough that there will be congressional hearings, court-martial proceedings, and possibly civilian prosecutions. The American people are going to learn that their military was being used to target American citizens. Mitchell understood the implications. The scandal would dominate headlines for months, destroy careers, and force a national conversation about the balance between security and constitutional rights. What happens to Private Chen now? She asked. He'll testify before congressional committees and federal grand juries. After that, assuming he wants to continue his military career, he'll need a new assignment. Somewhere his expertise can be used legally and constitutionally. Chen spoke for the first time in the meeting. I just want to be a soldier, ma'am. Nothing more complicated than that. Hayes smiled. Private, after what you've done, you'll have your pick of assignments. There are people in Washington who consider you a hero. And others who consider me a traitor. True. But the Constitution is on your side, and that tends to matter in the long run. 2 weeks later, the last federal investigator left FOB Talon. The base returned to its normal rhythm, but nothing was quite the same. The soldiers had learned that their quiet outpost could be connected to events that shaped national policy. They'd seen that individual courage could change the course of history. Sergeant Rodriguez approached Chen on his final day at the base. Private, I owe you an apology. No, you don't, Sergeant. You were looking out for your soldiers. I was being a bully. There's a difference. Chen nodded. Sometimes. But your soldiers know they can count on you to have their backs. That's worth something. Where are you headed? Back to a training assignment. Teaching constitutional law to junior officers. Rodriguez laughed. That seems appropriate. As the transport truck arrived to take Chen to his new assignment, Captain Mitchell watched from her office window. In 3 weeks, one quiet soldier had exposed illegal government programs, triggered federal investigations, and forced the military to confront its own constitutional obligations. He'd also reminded everyone at FOB Talon that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one with the biggest gun or the loudest voice, it's the one with the courage to ask uncomfortable questions and demand honest answers. The truck pulled away in a cloud of dust, carrying Chen toward whatever came next. But the questions he'd asked would echo through the military for years to come, ensuring that future soldiers would remember their oath to defend the Constitution meant something more than empty words. In the end, 9 soldiers had learned the truth about the new arrival. But the truth had been bigger than any of them expected, reaching far beyond their remote outpost to touch the very foundations of American democracy. Some truths were worth defending. And some soldiers were brave enough to defend them, no matter the cost.